The night was quiet, almost too quiet, when the news first hit. The city skyline stretched ahead, a jagged silhouette of steel and glass under a starry sky. Somewhere in the distance, a soft hum of drones buzzed, delivering packages and scanning the streets. But everything else? Silent. Then my phone buzzed. A message appeared on my screen, written in the familiar social media platform format. Exciting news! Your invitation is confirmed. Meet Xar'lex, the most famous influencer from Zogoth 7. Buckle up. It's going to be an unforgettable experience. I stared at it, blinking in disbelief. An alien influencer? The idea was preposterous. But then, the reality of the message sank in. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a stunt. The invitation was real. An influencer from another galaxy wanted to meet me. I looked around, my room illuminated by the glow of my phone's screen. Was I ready for this? Before I could second-guess myself, the doorbell rang. I opened it, expecting some kind of joke, or at least a human in a weird alien costume. But no. Standing there in front of me was Xar'lex. Tall. Too tall. Their skin shimmered in shades of purple and teal, iridescent like a living nebula. Their eyes were huge, round, and glowing. Not the creepy kind of glowing, but the soft, mesmerizing kind that pulsed like a far-off star. It was hard to focus on their facial features because every time I blinked, their appearance shifted slightly, almost like a hologram glitching. But their presence? It was powerful. "Hello, Earthling," Xar'lex said, voice soft but with a strange, melodic undertone. It was like they were speaking in a language I didn't fully understand, vibrations that made the air around us hum. Hi, I stammered, taken aback. "Are you ready to experience the universe through my lens?" Xar'lex asked, an elegant tilt of their head. I hesitated, looking down at the still glowing phone in my hand. A day with an alien influencer. My mind raced with questions, but all that came out was, how do we start? Xar'lex's glowing eyes blinked twice in quick succession. "We start with the pulse. Follow me." I didn't know what that meant, but I followed. We walked outside, where a sleek, silver craft hovered just above the ground. It looked like something between a spaceship and an ultramodern sports car. There was no visible cockpit, just a glowing arc of energy that encased the entire ship. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a plush interior that could have been designed by an advanced AI. "Step inside, Earthling," Xar'lex gestured, the invitation clear. I hesitated again, overwhelmed by the surrealism of it all. But I couldn't back out now, could I? With one last deep breath, I climbed into the ship, trying not to stare too hard at the strange buttons and glowing symbols on the dashboard. As we ascended into the sky, the city below shrinking into a grid of lights, Xar'lex spoke again. This time, their tone was more casual, like we were old friends. "On Zogoth 7, we influence through feeling. You will understand. It is not about pictures or videos, but emotions, the pulse that we send out." I nodded, though I had no idea what that meant. Every follower, every being who listens, receives it differently. Xar'lex continued, their voice almost hypnotic. "The pulse travels faster than light, faster than sound. It touches their hearts, their minds, and in a way they feel understood. I didn't want to admit it, but I was hooked. The concept was unlike anything I'd ever heard of. My world was filled with influencers who obsessed over numbers, likes, and algorithms. But Xar'lex wasn't interested in that. They weren't chasing clicks. They were chasing something deeper, something intangible, a feeling, a connection. Before I could ask more, the ship came to a stop. We were high above the city, the glowing lights reflecting off the craft's sleek surface. "We are ready," Xar'lex said, turning to me with a smile. "Prepare to feel." Chapter 2. The Pulse and the Unknown. As the ship hovered high above the city, Xar'lex's glowing eyes fixed on me, awaiting some kind of response. But truth be told, I was feeling overwhelmed. I had been invited to spend the day with an alien influencer, but now that I was actually here, floating in a sleek spacecraft miles above the Earth, it hit me. I had no idea what I was doing. "Are you nervous?" Xar'lex asked, their voice soft and almost teasing, as if they could sense the unease pulsing through the air around me. I guess I'm not sure what's happening, I admitted, trying to sound calm. Xar'lex gave a slow nod, their eyes flickering in a pattern that almost looked like understanding, or empathy, though I doubted they felt emotions the same way humans did. That is the human way. You must learn to trust the pulse. Let go. Allow it to guide you. They reached out and gestured toward the vast expanse of stars outside the ship, their hand moving in a fluid motion that felt like an invitation to something beyond words. Let go, I repeated, still trying to wrap my head around this strange new reality. What does that even mean? Xar'lex's smile widened, and the glow from their skin seemed to intensify. It was beautiful, alien but beautiful. It means stop thinking, stop questioning, experience the universe as it is. Let the pulse resonate within you. I blinked. I had no clue what that was supposed to mean, but something about Xar'lex's calm presence made me want to try. Before I could protest further, Xar'lex activated a series of buttons on the ship's dashboard, and the craft hummed softly as the environment around me shifted. The interior lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of their presence. The air seemed to thrum with a vibration that matched the steady pulse I felt deep in my chest, almost like a heartbeat, but not my own. It was the pulse they were talking about. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes, Xar'lex instructed. I hesitated but did as they asked. The moment my eyes closed, the hum around me grew louder, almost vibrating through my bones. My heartbeat accelerated, matching the strange pulse in the air. I felt a shift like a tug on the very fibers of my being. It was as if I was no longer just sitting in a spaceship. I was connected to something much larger than myself, something alive. The universe itself, perhaps? When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the ship anymore. I was standing in a vast, alien landscape, a world far from Earth. The sky shimmered with colors I couldn't describe, the ground beneath my feet pulsing with every step I took. It felt as though the entire planet was alive, breathing with me. Welcome to Zogoth 7. Xar'lex's voice echoed in my mind, soft and distant, though I knew they hadn't spoken aloud. I spun around, eyes wide in awe. Xar'lex stood next to me, their form glowing brighter now, almost as if they were a part of the landscape. This is where the pulse begins, they said, gesturing toward the horizon, where the sky swirled in iridescent hues. Everything you see, feel, and hear is connected. It is a shared experience. We are all part of the pulse. I reached out instinctively, trying to touch the air, the ground, but as my fingers brushed the surface, the energy shifted around me, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. This is real, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Xar'lex nodded, their expression serene. This is as real as any experience on Earth. But here, you do not need to understand with your mind. You only need to feel. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, just soaking in the overwhelming sensation of the pulse, the universe's energy flowing through every atom of my body. It wasn't just a feeling, it was an experience. It was as if I could sense the lives of billions of beings in distant galaxies, each one contributing to the greater pulse of existence. But then, as quickly as it began, the world around me dissolved, and I was back inside the ship. My breath was shallow, heart racing. The reality of my human senses returned with a jolt, and I tried to steady myself. You made me feel that, I whispered, still trying to process it all. My mind was reeling from the intensity of the experience. That was real, right? Xar'lex tilted their head. As real as you needed it to be. They paused, then added, the pulse cannot be fully understood through logic. It must be felt, and it is always real in the moment. I couldn't help but laugh nervously. Okay, but how do you know what your followers feel? How can you influence them like that? Xar'lex smiled softly, their expression glowing with warmth. We do not influence them in the way humans think of influence. We do not manipulate. We share our energy, our pulse, and in return, they share theirs. It is a mutual exchange. One cannot exist without the other. The followers do not just watch. They feel. Their words lingered in my mind like an echo. It was all so foreign, so different from anything I had ever known. But I trailed off. Isn't it dangerous? You could send the wrong pulse by accident. Xar'lex's eyes flickered, a subtle flicker of something I couldn't quite place. We are careful. The pulse is not something to be taken lightly, but neither is it something to fear. It is simply energy flowing from one being to another. Like any energy, it can be misinterpreted, misunderstood. But the truth always finds its way through. I nodded slowly, trying to understand. But one thing was clear. This was unlike anything I'd ever encountered before. Xar'lex wasn't just an influencer. They were a conduit of something ancient, something cosmic. And I had only scratched the surface. As the ship began its descent back to Earth, the hum of the engine filled the silence. The lights flickered briefly before steadying, and I found myself unable to stop thinking about what Xar'lex had said. The pulse, a connection beyond what I could comprehend. And yet, there was still so much more to discover. Chapter 3. The Alien Behind the Screen. The ship's descent felt almost too smooth, too controlled, like we were gliding on invisible waves of energy. I could barely grasp the reality of what had just happened. It wasn't just a pulse, though. It was everything. The shimmering world of Zogoth 7. The way Xar'lex had made me feel connected to something greater than myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt insignificant in the best possible way. Small, but in a way that made me realize just how vast the universe truly was. When we touched down back in the city, the ship's lights dimmed, and the soft hum died down. Xar'lex stepped out first, the glow of their skin lighting up the surroundings like a neon beacon in the night. I followed, still in a daze, my mind wrestling with the enormity of the experience. Was it a dream? Was I hallucinating? Or was this just another example of how humans, myself included, are always too quick to explain things with logic and reason? Xar'lex turned to me, offering a smile that was almost reassuring. You are quiet. You feel the pulse now. I nodded, still struggling to wrap my head around it. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I've never felt anything like it, but it felt real. It was real. They tilted their head, clearly intrigued by my response. The pulse is always real. You cannot touch it with your hands, but you can feel it with your essence. I tried to process what they were saying. Okay, but what about your followers? I mean, you're this huge influencer. How does that work? I don't understand how you can have millions of followers if you don't post anything like we do on Earth. Xar'lex's glowing eyes flickered briefly, almost like a subtle wink. We do not post in your sense of the word. Posting implies an image, a moment captured in time. But the pulse is not bound by time. It is a continuous exchange. Our followers feel us in real time, from millions of light years away. I frowned, still confused. Wait, so you're telling me that people or aliens can actually feel what you feel? Yes, Xar'lex responded calmly. And we feel them in return. It is a constant flow of energy, shared across all beings who tune in. They may not always understand what they are feeling, but the connection is there. That is why they follow us. They want to understand what it is to be alive, to exist beyond the limits of their physical forms. A wave of awe swept over me. It was all so simple, yet so complex. Xar'lex wasn't just broadcasting their life. They were inviting others to be a part of it, to share in the experience. It wasn't about fame or popularity. It was about something deeper, more spiritual. We made our way back through the city, and as we walked, I couldn't help but ask the question that had been gnawing at me since our encounter in the ship. Xar'lex, how did you even become an influencer in the first place? I mean, how did this all start? For the first time, Xar'lex paused, as if considering how to answer. Their eyes twinkled as they looked up at the vast expanse of stars above us, their form casting a soft, shimmering glow on the pavement. We are not influencers, as you think of them. Earthling, Xar'lex began slowly. We are conduits of something larger than ourselves. My people, and many others across the galaxy, discovered the pulse long before any technology or social media existed. It was never about getting likes or followers. It was about spreading the energy, sharing the feeling of existence, connecting beings across space and time. Their gaze shifted back to me, and for the first time, I saw something I hadn't expected: vulnerability. It was fleeting, but it was there. I did not ask to be an influencer. It is the nature of the pulse to resonate. When I began to share my energy with others, they felt it. They wanted more. And so, the exchange grew, and I, too, learned from them. We are all part of a cycle, an endless cycle of sharing and understanding. I was speechless, trying to grasp the depth of their words. There was no ego here, no obsession with fame or numbers. Xar'lex wasn't a celebrity. They were a teacher, a guide, a being in tune with the very fabric of the universe. And their followers weren't just fans. They were participants in a much larger experience. As we continued our walk, we arrived at a futuristic cafe, glowing, sleek, and filled with other alien patrons. The atmosphere was warm, vibrant, and buzzing with energy, not from voices or music, but from the pulse itself. It was palpable, a living presence in the air. Xar'lex turned to me with a curious smile. "Would you like to try our energy cube?" I nodded hesitantly. Energy cube? It is a food from Xogoth 7. It will help you understand the pulse in a new way. We sat at a table, and a small glowing orb was placed before me. It was the size of a marble, but shimmered with iridescent light. Xar'lex picked it up effortlessly, holding it between their fingers, and then offered it to me. "Eat it," Xar'lex instructed. "It will help you attune to the pulse." I wasn't sure what to expect, but I took the cube and placed it in my mouth. The moment it touched my tongue, I felt it, a rush of energy unlike anything I could describe. It wasn't just a taste. It was a sensation that reverberated through my entire being. My mind buzzed with thoughts and images, and my heart began to race in rhythm with the pulse. It was as if the cube was somehow merging with me, becoming part of me, part of my very essence. I gasped, eyes wide in shock. "What is this?" Xar'lex smiled, their form glowing brighter now. "It is the essence of Xogoth 7. We call it Phelam. It allows one to feel the energy of the planet, to connect to the pulse directly. I could feel my body vibrating with energy, as if I had tapped into something ancient and powerful. The experience was overwhelming, yet oddly comforting. I could sense the life force of the beings around me. My mind expanded, taking in the hum of the entire cafe. It wasn't just the people I could feel. It was everything: the air, the floor, the walls, the stars above. It was all connected. After what felt like an eternity, the energy slowly faded, and I was left sitting there, breathless, but somehow more alive than I had ever felt before. Xar'lex looked at me with a knowing expression. "You are beginning to understand. The pulse is not just something we share. It is everything. It is life itself." I sat back in my chair, trying to absorb everything. In one day, I had experienced more than I ever thought possible. And I knew this was just the beginning. But one thing was clear: I was no longer the same. I had tapped into something much greater than myself, something far beyond the confines of Earth. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go of that feeling anytime soon. Chapter 4. The Moment of Truth. The energy cube's effects lingered long after the initial rush had faded. I was no longer sure where my body ended and the world around me began. The pulse, this strange, intangible force, had seeped into my very being, leaving me feeling more attuned to the universe than I had ever imagined possible. I was aware of every movement in the cafe, every flicker of light, every breath, as if I could feel the heartbeat of every being present. But as the moment stretched on, a part of me also began to feel lost. Xar'lex seemed to sense my shift in mood. They tilted their head, studying me with their glowing eyes, and in a soft, melodic tone, asked, "Are you overwhelmed?" I nodded, still trying to gather my thoughts. It's a lot. I mean, I've never experienced anything like this. I don't even know how to explain it." "You do not need to explain it, Earthling," Xar'lex replied. "The pulse is beyond words. It is felt. You must trust your own experience with it." I swallowed, trying to ground myself in the reality I knew. The cafe around me had faded into the background. The only thing I could focus on was the hum of energy pulsing from Xar'lex, from the beings around me, from the very air. This was something deeper than any earthly connection or social media interaction I had ever experienced. It wasn't about followers, likes, or even sharing moments online. This was about something far older, more profound, a connection to the very essence of life itself. After a long pause, I asked quietly, what happens if someone doesn't understand the pulse? If they can't connect to it? Xar'lex's gaze softened. That is the greatest challenge we face as influencers. The pulse is not meant to be understood with the mind. It must be felt in your heart, your spirit. If you resist, it can be confusing, even overwhelming. But if you accept it, if you allow it to flow through you, you will understand. You will become part of the pulse. I could feel their words vibrating through me, but I still wasn't sure if I could fully let go. What did it mean to truly feel this pulse? Could I, a mere human, ever grasp it in the way Xar'lex and their people did? Could I connect with the universe in this profound way? Or was I just an observer, forever on the outside? Xar'lex reached across the table and placed their hand on mine. Their skin was cool to the touch, but it sent a strange warmth through me, like I was being grounded in something greater. Do not fear, Earthling, they said, their voice soothing. The pulse is a gift, but it is not something you have to control. It flows. You simply need to allow it. For the next few hours, we talked, and the conversation wandered through topics that felt simultaneously trivial and deeply meaningful. Xar'lex spoke of the distant stars, the evolution of their species, and their understanding of energy that surpassed anything on Earth. They explained that the pulse was not just a tool for connection, it was a way of life, something that defined their existence. But as we neared the end of our time together, something shifted. The air around us began to hum again, but this time, it was more intense. The pulse that had felt so calm earlier now seemed to grow in strength, as if it were building towards something powerful. Xar'lex stood, their figure glowing brighter than ever. It is time for you to experience the truth of the pulse. I stood up as well, feeling a surge of nervous energy. What do you mean? They smiled gently. You have felt it. You have connected to it. But now, you must decide. Do you let it control you? Or do you let it free you? The hum intensified. My heart raced in time with the pulse, and I suddenly felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of unknown potential. The universe seemed to be calling to me, urging me to make a choice. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts, but nothing felt certain. Would I let go and embrace this otherworldly experience? Or would I retreat into the safety of my human limitations? Xar'lex extended their hand to me. Come, let the pulse show you what it means to truly be free. With a shaky exhale, I placed my hand in theirs. The moment we touched, it felt as though the ground beneath us had fallen away. The world around me blurred, and I could feel the pulse surge through me in a flood of colors, sensations, and emotions I couldn't describe. It wasn't overwhelming this time. It was beautiful. It was liberating. For a few brief seconds, I felt infinite. I felt as though I was part of everything. Every star, every planet, every being. The pulse didn't belong to Xar'lex alone, nor to me. It belonged to the universe. And in that moment, I was one with it. But just as quickly it faded. The connection, that powerful rush of energy, softened, leaving me standing in the cafe once again, though this time it felt different. I wasn't just a human, an observer anymore. I was part of something greater. The pulse was now inside me, and it had changed the way I saw everything. It had changed the way I saw myself. Xar'lex looked at me, their smile soft but knowing. You have experienced the truth of the pulse. It is not something to fear, not something to control. It is simply a part of life. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, though I wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was the release of the overwhelming feelings that had surged through me. Or perhaps it was the beauty of the moment. Thank you, I whispered, overwhelmed with gratitude. I never thought I would understand, but now I do. Xar'lex nodded, their eyes shimmering with a deep, ancient understanding. You understand now, Earthling, and you will carry the pulse with you, no matter where you go.